Coming up, we have chapter 4 of the Henchman. It's called the DarkSlayer. And now we're going to get into some action. If you've been waiting for action, this is your episode. But first, go into the description and click on that link for a free ebook that'll download right to you. There'll also be a link in there for my latest book. It's getting rave reviews. It's a page turner, all of that cool stuff. That'll be in there. Shield of the King. The link will be in there. And remember to like and follow and share and all of that fun stuff for this channel. All right, let's do it. Welcome back to Great Stories Change the World, the YouTube channel where a fantasy science fiction author, that's me, rates different movies and television shows, and I have different conversations about writing, about how we can make great stories and write and produce great stories, because I do believe that great stories have amazing impact in my life and in the lives of others. If you think about it, there are so many stories, movies, books that we love that have had such a huge impact on us, and we remember how they made us feel. And I want to write those kind of stories. So today we're going to be doing chapter 4 of my latest book. I've been reading through this, and I'm writing it a chapter at a time, called The Henchman. This is Hammer Soul, part 1, book 1, probably a 3 or 4 book series of novellas is what I'm planning. But today we're going to be doing chapter 4, and this is the DarkSlayer. But first, I want to talk a little bit about some things that I've been watching and reading and doing and things like that. So first, I really want to suggest that people pick up The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I finished it over this past weekend. I've been delving into this thing. I highly recommend this book. It's mystical, it's practical, it's inspirational, it's real, and it's kind of raw at times. And Rick Rubin, if you don't know, was a producer in the 80s. And if you don't know some of his bands that he worked with, you know, the Beastie Boys and some different people, that he really did a lot of creative things in the 80s and in the early 90s. And I'm sure he still does, but that's kind of where he made his name. And he wrote this book about being a creative person in the arts. And I highly recommend it. Check it out. Rick Rubin, The Creative Act. You can get the audiobook was awesome. He reads it, and different things, different formats you can get it. So look it up on Amazon. I've also been watching the new Avatar. We're about 3 or 4 episodes in with my family, with my kids. My kids love Avatar, The Last Airbender, the show from, 20, 30 years ago. It's a great show. It's one of the best written shows with characters and twists and turns, and they build towards a satisfying conclusion. And it just had a lot of great elements to it. The animation was great. It's where Dave Filoni kind of came from. George Lucas saw The Last Airbender, the cartoon, and asked Dave Filoni to come on board to do the Clone Wars. So it is a phenomenal property. Love it a lot. And so they did a live action version where M. Night did a movie, and it's not a movie. You can't do this story in 3 movies or a movie. Like this is such a big story, such a great story. So then Netflix has decided to do their own live action version, and I have enjoyed it, and my kids have enjoyed it, and we all pretty much agree that it's good and it's worth watching. So if you're curious out there, it's good, it's worth watching, but it's not quite as good as the cartoon. The cartoon is still better, but they're doing a good job. They're staying very faithful to the original story from the cartoon. They're just doing it with live action. They're condensing some of the storylines. So in the original cartoon, if you don't know, they would hit a lot of these towns and a lot of these little places, world building along the way on their journeys, right? And with Aang and Sokka and all those, Katara. But in this one, they kind of skip some of that and get to the big moments of the show in every season, which I think is going to be cool. But again, it's not quite as good. The highlight to me of this show is the casting. The casting is amazing. They finally got the casting right. And my favorite cast member is, I have to get his name right, Paul Sun Hyung Lee. He's Korean, and he was in one of my favorite shows of recent years, sitcoms called Kim's Convenience. And I know some people like it, some people don't. It was a Canadian show, and I think you can still watch it on Netflix. But it is a great show. But he is an amazing actor, and he's funny and he's heartfelt. And when I heard about this casting, I thought he's perfect for Uncle Iroh, and he is perfect. And I love him in that role. And he knocks it out of the park. So that's really good. Now, for some writing updates for me, I'm getting really close to beginning the rough draft of book 2 of Elowen. So Shield of the King is out. It's getting rave reviews, promotion, all that stuff is happening. And people are already asking me, when is book 2 coming out? It's not really a cliffhanger at the end of book 1, but there's definitely more story. And you can tell like there's another step in her journey that's about to happen. And so people are already asking me about the next book and get it out as soon as possible. But I'm starting to write the rough draft soon. I'm getting close to brainstorming. I can feel it. That's kind of how it is with me and writing stories. Some stories is I kind of have to feel my way into it. I have to see, am I in the right space? And you still have to jump into it to a certain degree. You're never going to be fully ready to start a story, but you can feel like, I think I can dive into this and really give it my all. So I'm getting close. So now we're going to transition into chapter 4 of the Henchman. So Mr. Grimm has been tasked by his boss, right? Lord Tomas. So there's kind of like organized crime in this city of Landon. And so Lord Tomas is one of the big guys, one of the main players in the organized crime syndicates in the city. This is fantasy, epic fantasy. And so he's doing his search, and he has just had a conversation in chapter 3, spoiler alert, with someone called Dana. She's a prostitute. And so he had a conversation with her, okay? And now that's where we're picking up with chapter 4. So check it out. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in a second. Chapter 4, The DarkSlayer. Leaving Dana's apartment, I stepped into the alley and took the time to silently scan for any movement or sound. All signs said I was alone, but I wanted to make extra sure I kept Dana safe. Wouldn't do to have anyone know my informant. So I turned and traveled further into the shadows and alleys. These narrow passages between buildings were like a maze, but I had grown up on these streets. Orphaned as a boy, I learned to fight, to steal, whatever I could to stay alive. Being small, I needed to hide more than anything else, so I knew these winding paths better than most. Many shadows held memories that called to me while I went, most of them bloody or tragic. Somehow, I had survived and got bigger. And when I got big and mean enough, the Daigul could use me. But sometimes you get older and begin to think different thoughts, see things from another perspective. Better or worse, not sure, but you do. I did. Maybe there was more to life than survival. That had led me to fighting for men who sought to take and control or destroy. There had to be a better way, right? I had grown tired of it all. Even though I had only seen the darkness of humanity and elves, had profited from it myself, I imagined there must be. I had wound my way through the shadows for long enough, but when I turned to head back north, a faint sound caught my attention. A scratch, faint, above me. With decades of experience on these streets, I moved in the next thought, ducking. A weapon whistled above my head, feeling only a couple millimeters above my hair, and then another grazed my shoulder, a dagger of some sort. I let my movement forward carry me into a controlled tumble, at the same time reaching down and grabbing the handle of Bone Wrecker. When completing the roll, I spun on a heel in a crouch and faced back the way I came with the hammer in my hand. A figure dropped into the dark alley 10 paces in front of me. more of a moving shadow, but the light was sufficient to reveal a person in gray pants and shirt, the face covered with a black scarf, only the dark eyes visible. Shog me, I thought, a DarkSlayer. DarkSlayers were independent contractors, assassins for the Daigal lords on both sides, loyal only to coin. The figure held a short pole with a curved blade at the end, a sickle, and a chain was attached to the end of the handle. The metal chain ended with a small spiked ball at the end. The narrow alley should have given me an advantage, but the DarkSlayer stepped back and began to swing the ball on the end of the chain with his right hand, the sickle in his left. A distance weapon, a good counter for someone with, say, a hammer. The legends told us the DarkSlayers came from the rural areas of the Varadan North, trained in secret as experts in several different types of weapons. This one chose the sickle and chain for me. They could be both men and women. Shifting back and forth, barely giving a moving target, I bared my teeth at it and hefted my hammer in front of me, more of a defensive stance on the balls of my feet. The DarkSlayer, spinning the ball on the chain, feinted once, then twice, and I didn't go for the fake. With blinding speed, the spiked metal ball shot at my shoulder. I barely had time to react, dodging it. The ball swung in a return to the assassin, and as I straightened a bit, my eyes widened at the sickle now flying at my head. I ducked and retreated a step, and the spiked ball clinked in a ricochet off the stone next to me, low and angled now behind my leg. The DarkSlayer yanked on the chain, and the chain caught on my ankle. The chain wrapped around my lower leg, and the ball smacked the inside of my ankle. It dug into my boot's leather instead of flesh, but it still hurt plenty. I cried out and then grunted because the DarkSlayer turned its whole body and pulled my leg out from under me. My foot went straight out in front of me, and I had no control when I went down on my back, knocking the breath out of me, splayed like a child on the stony dirt of the alley. The DarkSlayer leapt into the air, the sickle somehow in his hand again, and he descended upon me, slashing the sickle's blade down upon my gut to eviscerate me. No matter how I looked in that moment, I wasn't a child, and Bonewrecker was still in my hand. The hammer swung up, and I sat up only enough to put enough force behind the throw. I slung Bonewrecker, large stone first, at the assassin. I could have aimed for the DarkSlayer's head, but I didn't. First, the figure could dodge a throw at the head. Second, I wanted him or her alive enough to talk. The instant instinctual choice was made, and the hammer shot like an arrow to the DarkSlayer's center mass. An arrow would have gone through the body, however. Bonewrecker wasn't an arrow. Since the assassin was in midair, it couldn't adjust enough to avoid the strike, although it tried. Bonewrecker hit the DarkSlayer in the upper chest, toward a shoulder. Something snapped, probably the collarbone. The force twisted the body and slammed it into the wall of the alley. I was big but fast, and I was halfway on my feet by then. I reached out and snatched my hammer's handle before it hit the ground. Now in a crouch, I turned on the dazed DarkSlayer, who still had the sickle in one hand, the other empty. Couldn't let those threats continue, especially not from such an expert. So Bonewrecker first crushed the DarkSlayer's sickle hand against the wall. Noise like a bundle of sticks breaking echoed through the alley, and it yelled in pain, a muffled sound with the scarf around his face. The assassin lifted his other hand, trying to hit me, but I knocked his punch aside easily and headbutted him or her in the face, my forehead smacking the bridge of the nose, which snapped the head back to bounce against the wall. Twisting, I positioned my hammer to the opposite side and swung across my body to hit the upper arm of the fist that tried to hit me. Another bone broken. During the resulting gurgles of pain, I didn't stop moving. In the next second, the hammer shattered one of the assassin's knees. The DarkSlayer's body fell to the ground, I helped it turn so it dropped on its back. I removed the scarf in a rough pull, snatching it from the head. The head bobbled. Now uncovered, the face had a beard, mustache, and square jawline. A man. With one hand, I grabbed the front of his shirt and lifted him to my snarling face. With the other, I lifted Bone Wrecker in threat. Who paid you? I said through gritted teeth. What lord? Hugo? Marcos? Dren? The DarkSlayer focused his dark eyes on me, blood pouring from his nose. My voice quieted, dangerous. You have a heartbeat left. Tell me. The assassin opened his mouth to reveal the inside of his mouth. No tongue. I sighed, my shoulders slumping. Some DarkSlayers would have their tongues cut out so they couldn't be interrogated, couldn't give up information. Those made more money, but he could communicate other ways, even though the likelihood was low. I don't care about your tongue. I want what's in your breaking brain, I said. Nod or shake your head. Was it Hugo? No response. Marcos? Nothing. Dren? Again, nothing. It had been a long shot anyway. Any DarkSlayer who had his tongue cut off wouldn't give information another way either. He'd be trained for it. And he knew he was dead anyway. He wouldn't want to tarnish the DarkSlayer reputation. I didn't have time for this. I let go of his shirt and his body dropped to the ground. I raised the hammer enough to get good leverage, and I slammed Bone Wrecker down on his face. His head flattened, and blood splattered over my leather vest, my face, and the wall. I had gotten blood on the hammer today, after all. How long had the assassin followed me? What had his job been? And if he had been following me long enough, I thought one word, a name, Dana. Leaving the dead body in the alley, I wiped a drop of blood from my cheek and leapt to my feet. After unraveling the chain from my leg, I raced back through the alleys, ignoring the pain in my calf and ankle from the spiked ball, not bothering to vary my path. DarkSlayers worked alone. I tried to dismiss the bloody thoughts from my head in the minutes it took to get there, to no avail. Reaching Dana's door, I smashed through it with my shoulder and sprinted into the back room. I smelled her blood before I registered the sight. She lay on her bed, her arms and legs wide, her robe open. A single slash of a blade had opened her throat, and blood covered her chest and had soaked the sheets on either side of her. Her eyes were still open, but she didn't see anything anymore. Dana, the bed coiner, was dead. Well, that was it. That was chapter 4 of the Henchman, the DarkSlayer. And now we've got some action. We've got some blood. We've got some grit. We got some death. We got some stuff happening. You let me know what you thought of it. As I was reading through it this time, I should have edited it one more time. Edited it one more time. Had the trouble with that word. Because this is a rough draft, though. This is only my first draft of this. I'll probably clean it up more when I kind of put it together, compile it for an ebook or something to give away or sell. We'll see what I do with it in the end, but you let me know what you thought of it. Also put in the comments what you think of The Last Airbender, the Avatar live action series from Netflix. Let me know what you thought of it. And let me know if you're reading anything. I'd love some book suggestions. I'm kind of in this place where I'm ready to read a new book, but I don't really have anything next on my list. So let me know if you have anything that you've really been enjoying. And remember to like, follow, share, all that fun stuff. All right. Peace.